Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain comes out tomorrow, and as a refresher I went back and replayed Ground Zeroes. I had a lot of fun playing it again, but while I was, it occurred to me just how many different things about this game are odd. Both in a story and business sense, Ground Zeroes is a bit of a black sheep, so here are a couple of reasons why. When people talk about Ground Zeroes, this is usually one of the complaints they'll have with it. It's a $20 demo, what a ripoff. And while I'll agree that the original $40 price tag is way too high for something that doesn't pay back enough in value, the fact that this was a thing at all is bizarre. Ground Zeroes is the first part of a story that leads into the next game in the series, The Phantom Pain. When the game first came out, it wasn't clear when Phantom Pain would come, so people were buying this prologue to a story that wasn't yet ready or close to being released. And it's not like this is a business practice done outside of video games. Imagine buying a book's prologue and waiting for the main story to come out later. It just doesn't happen. But Ground Zeroes showcases a bit of gameplay too, so that makes this a demo release for a game as a standalone product. Ground Zeroes introduced a new feature where if you get in a guard's line of sight, time slows down so you can deal with them without alerting anyone else. It's neat, and I think it allows for a bit more varied ways in going about dealing with situations. Metal Gear has never been known for its combat system, it's always been a bit clunky, but with this I feel it's easier to deal with guards and get through things a bit faster. For better or for worse. It kind of makes stealth seem like it doesn't hold as much of a precedence, but it's still optimal to not get caught. But if you don't like this feature, there is an option to turn it off. The biggest addition to gameplay is in the form of this new device called the iDroid. You can mark enemies, listen to cassettes, call helicopters, it's a holographic map, a mission briefer, and I think it's also your radio? Most of that is just putting previous features in MGS games all in one spot, but I think it might have caused a few narrative problems. Ground Zeroes takes place only a year after the events of Peace Walker, and while I haven't played that game, from what I've seen the technology in it seems to be a lot more dated than it does here, and it also seems a bit more impressive than the stuff in the original Metal Gear. I mean, the jump into the absurd technology of the series had to go in somewhere, but its introduction probably would have gone smoother had the iDroid have just been several different machines. But even technology aside, Snake himself looks at least 10 years older than he should at this point. I mean, if this is how he looked in Peace Walker, I just have a hard time thinking that this is him 1 year later. And I think all of this is because it is still a demo for Phantom Pain. Ground Zeroes' 1975 setting was never believable. It always felt more like an 80s sci-fi like what Phantom Pain is going to be. Then again, it's not like Metal Gear Solid felt like it was in 2005, but that's because the series went full-on sci-fi. I guess the prequel games utilized their setting's actual history, pop culture, or technological state to where it blended well with its time. Ground Zeroes felt much more out of place in that regard. It also doesn't help that this one feels much more serious than any other MGS game. Nothing here seems to be played with a laugh. It's serious throughout the main game, but that's sort of the thing about Metal Gear. It's a series about the atrocities of war, but it's also about big ol' anime robots. So while it might be taking itself seriously, there's always a part where the villains are so over the top that you can't help but find it silly, or it's just ridiculous throughout. Ground Zeroes never had a part where it lightens up though, and I'd say that it's probably because the game was just too short for it to get to that part. But the ridiculous factor and the correct time frame seems like stuff that the Phantom Pain will probably have. But that's just another reason why Ground Zeroes doesn't hold up well as its standalone product. It's a prologue sold before the book, it's an appetizer before the main dish, or something like that. Again, this mostly seems like problems that will be fixed in the Phantom Pain, but I have a hard time saying that Ground Zeroes holds well as its own game. That isn't to say that I didn't like it, it's fantastic, but it's too dark, too unbelievable, and too short to get the best parts of its series staples. Here's to the Phantom Pain and how it will finally finish this long and convoluted story about Japanese robots and snakes.